Well, I am always on the lookout for new places to buy great plants. And today we're going to showcase a few wonderful natives with Matt Pilcher, the owner and proprietor of the newly opened Thrive Garden Center in Kingston Springs, Tennessee. So Matt's been a friend for a number of years, and I was so excited to hear that his dream was coming true to open a new place, and native heavy, but not exclusively native.
That's right.
So tell us a little bit about what we have here in front of us.
Well, a few of my favorites. I'll start with the red buckeye. This is one of my absolute favorite natives. It's one of the first things I see hummingbirds on in the spring.
Right.
And as they age and get some size to them, they can get a fairly dense canopy, which is great in the fall. Early fall, they'll go a brilliant shade of yellow before they shed their leaves for winter. So I get at least 2 seasons of interest out of this amazing small tree.
Right. Well, and you mentioned the hummingbirds, and it's actually this plant that the scouts follow from the Gulf Coast north.
That's right.
One of several, but this one and a few others. So as the red buckeyes come into bloom, which mine started just a few days ago, and within 24 hours I had my first hummingbird.
I've seen our first on this one this year.
So, and then down here to the front, we have one of my favorite native trees, and kind of hard to find. So I'm glad to know that somebody is carrying it. But this is big leaf magnolia.
That's right. They're one of the largest leaves you'll find around here. They almost look completely tropical. But my favorite is when they start to bloom. Sometimes once they've got some size, they're a little hard to find the blooms, but you can always smell them. You may not always see it, but you'll smell it from 50 feet away.
Yeah, and kind of a lemony smell, and a flower almost like our southern magnolia, a big white bloom with a little red mark in the center, but incredible tree and amazing foliage, one of the largest leafed deciduous trees in the United States even. What about this bright yellow plant that's down in front of us?
So this is a Florida Elysium. This particular one is Florida Sunshine. And what makes it really special is the bright green leaves that it holds all year round. We'll occasionally have a very hard winter and it'll knock a few leaves off, but as a general rule, this plant will grow as long as it's not in full sun. It's a very happy plant and really easy to grow.
Right, so good morning sun, dappled shade, bright dappled shade all day. And as you mentioned, it keeps its leaves year round, which there aren't a lot of natives that we think of as good kind of evergreen foundation plants or accent plants, and this is one of them. Not nearly as finicky as like our rhododendrons and those kinds of things.
That's right.
So, and then next to it, another buckeye maybe?
It is, yeah. That's our native Bottlebrush Buckeye. It's a fantastic plant, usually a little hard to grow in containers, so they tend to be on the small side, but once you get it in the ground where it's happy, it takes off like a rocket and makes a gorgeous large shrub. Midsummer, when everything else is taking a break, because of the heat, it sends up these huge spikes of white flowers, and then again, we get a great fall show from that plant too.
And then finally, back here right in front of me, one of our classic native trees, the white dogwood.
That's
also
right.
Comes in pink and kind of a reddish, deeper pink.
Yep. This one is Cherokee Princess, bred to be a little more anthracnose and powdery mildew resistant.
Right.
But otherwise, exactly the same as what you'd find in the woods in Middle Tennessee. I had a really great friend once say that you don't have a southern garden without a dogwood or a magnolia.
I would agree with that. Well, in addition to a really nice selection of trees and shrubs, also some great native and non-native perennials, but native in particular, and one of my favorites for shade that's blooming right now as you drive up and down the roadsides and even look off into the woods here, blue phlox.
Phlox divaricata. It's an easy phlox to grow in the shade. It's a real dependable bloomer, and the fragrance is to die for. I love the way they smell.
And where it's happy, it will kind of politely reseed itself, and you'll have more in coming years. So that's a really great one. Another shade plant, I'll switch out here, are these heucheras and tiarellas, and then some of the hybrids that are heucherellas.
That's right. This happens to be one of those. This one's called hopscotch, and it's a fantastic color in the shade. It's hard to find a lot of foliar color in the shade because most things out there are just green.
Right.
But this one's great, and when they bloom late spring, they just cover themselves in little white stalks of flowers, which is really pretty.
So if you're growing hostas and hellebores and you want some native things to mix in, that phlox we just looked at, or these euchorellas, tiarellas, all of those will work. Another brightly colored foliage plant, this little lady here,
that's right,
Tradescantia Sweet Kate.
This is one of the ones that I've had in almost every shade garden I've ever grown. That shot of color is worth the plant's location every single time.
Right.
And then we get the dark purple, like Concord grape flowers on top. That the plant, the contrast with itself, you just can't beat.
Yeah. It is a great shade plant, and that is you know, where I grow it mostly, but I'll also mention that I have one spot in my garden where I get a lot of drainage and it stays pretty wet. Absolutely full sun, and as long as it's moist at the roots, it will do full sun equally as well as shade. So you have multiple choices with one plant with this one. And then one of my very favorite native perennials for full blistering sun in a dry spot where you can't get anything else to grow.
Absolutely. Rudbeckia maxima.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorites too. I don't often get a chance to use it because it gets so big.
Yeah.
But where you've got some space and you need a flower that's over your head, this is a phenomenal choice.
Yeah.
I've always loved the blue foliage too.
Yeah, it's great foliage, big wide clumps. I have a mature clump in my garden, probably 3 feet wide at the base. And it does grow tall, but I will mention this also. It grows straight up and it stands straight up. So it doesn't take up, you know, 6 or 8 feet of width like a shrub does.
That's right.
What you get at the base is about a 2 to 3 foot mound of foliage, and then the flowering stalks with bright yellow daisies and black centers come up on about a 6 foot stem, straight up out of the middle of the plant. So don't be afraid of this just because it gets tall.
Absolutely.
You know, we can always use height in the garden no matter how big or small your beds are. You can always use something that grows upright as long as it stays upright and doesn't sprawl all over everything else. Another real showstopper, and again, not native,
right,
but really spectacular, is this Golden Dawn Redwood.
Yes. I love this tree. I have one that I planted about 14 years ago. It's right now it's about 25, 26 feet tall. And it's just this beacon of yellow in the landscape. But
right.
It's absolutely stunning. It looks like it's been plugged into the wall.
Yeah, really, really, and it stays brightly colored like this through the summer. It does. It's not one of those things that leafs out gold and then turns green in the heat.
No, it's very dependable.
And in fact, sometimes I think in the heat, they're even more gold than they are when they leaf out. Really good. This is going to be a big tree.
Yeah.
So don't plant this right up next to the house. This is a tree for out in the yard.
That's right.
Well, I always love finding a new place to shop where I can find interesting, unusual plants. Matt, I wish you terrific success in your new venture.
Thank you, Troy.
For inspiring garden tours, growing tips, and garden projects, visit our website at volunteergardener.org or on YouTube at the Volunteer Gardener channel, and like us on Facebook.